Good to have you, Michael. Lovely to meet you. Hope you're doing well. Let's just get straight into it. So obviously this is the College Tribune. We're a university newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to start out, where college did you go to, and like what are your earliest memories of college and your whole sort of experience with university and that?
Yeah, so I went to two. So I went to NUIG first. I was only 17 at the time. So I kind of went and I did a business degree because I thought that was what you were supposed to do. And that any other kind of creative pursuits or whatever were maybe a bit of a waste of time or that kind of way. So I decided, right, I sold out pretty much immediately and decided, right, I'll go do business. Kind of got there, was away from home for the first time, was kind of looking after myself for the first time, and yeah, didn't fit. And so I ended up just having to come home, and I dropped out. I only turned 18 in the December or whatever, so I mean I had no ID, like nothing, like I couldn't go out, couldn't, it was it was very isolating and stuff like that. It was just not the right time to go. I definitely should have done transition year or something like that, because I was just, even though I was well behaved, didn't mean I was mature enough to actually cope with that. So I went home and I worked for a while, and then I went to Trinity the next year doing French and Hispanic studies. So a bit of a change in that.
Yeah.
I kind of realized, I want to learn about, I want to learn other languages because that fascinated me, but also like literature and films and stuff like that. I really wanted to study that. So yeah, it kind of fit because it had that kind of practical skill of the language along with, all the stuff I really like doing.
Brilliant. And, in terms of obviously, Trinity and Dublin having a fairly large student social scene, is there any sort of like nights out or memories that sort of stand out to you in your time in Trinity?
I loved Trinity Ball because it was so bizarre. Like it was just kind of, because it was always really dark. It was like pitch black and everyone was wearing suits. And it, like, everybody every year got lost for like 2 hours and found somebody new or ended up talking to somebody new or whatever. So I always loved doing that. And then I used to go to Workman's all the time. Like I'm fairly sure first year I went to Workman's, I think like 12 weeks in a row, because that's all the only place my friends wanted to go, and we were all like indie kids, so we're all obsessed with like Alt J and Radiohead and stuff. So it was the kind of place to go if you wanted to meet similar people.
Yeah.
So
So Hardcore Street was just a no-go area then, basically.
pretty much, yeah. I think we kind of went there maybe ironically. We'd end up in like D2 or somewhere like that. And like, yeah, we did do that though. We did go to the Palace a few times, and I like the taste of like warm Jaeger bombs, because they take the glasses straight out of the dishwasher. It just reminds me of that time. So not great.
Oh God, yeah. Palace was actually the first club I went to, and I think it shut down not long after. And I remember going, "Thank God, I never got to step foot in that place again." But yeah, so obviously, throughout your time in college, and you graduated. Was there ever a point was there any point during college, or was it kind of after college, that you decided, maybe comedy and sketches and so on is something I want to pursue? Like, was there ever a sort of a light bulb moment, or was it just something you naturally kind of gradually kind of got into?
I think I was very intimidated at the start, so I didn't really get involved with players or any of those kind of societies, because like I came from a football school where that sort of stuff was just not even considered or valued or anything like that. So you arrive and you meet all these people who did musicals in school and like had a really good teacher who was really into drama, and that was a thing they did outside school or whatever. So I think at the start I kind of shied away from that, because I was like, well, I am a piece of shit. I I'm not able to do this. But they did a thing called 6 plays in a day, where you write, direct, and put on a play within 24 hours. So I signed up to be a writer in that in first year, and that was great because it was kind of like, oh, if I work with people, they can kind of improve what I've written, and then it's a show. And it was just really cool to see that kind of play out. And I was like, oh, this is good. But I didn't really engage for another 2 years then. And then there's a friend of mine who even when we were kids, like I've known him since I was like 7, and we decided, oh, let's do a sketch show. And there wasn't like a Cambridge Footlights kind of group or anything like that in Trinity. So we set up our own, and we got some writers in and stuff like that. And so like I wasn't very good at kind of attending things and all that kind of stuff. So I'd set this thing up, but didn't really engage with it that much. I wrote the odd sketch, and I just didn't appear in it then in the end because I was just so busy, like finally or whatever. So that was kind of an exposure to it, but it wasn't until after university that, when I was on Twitter and things like that, that I kind of realized, oh, I might be funny here. And then I started doing the videos, and that was kind of the confirmation then of people being like, this is great, And it was just kind of the case of like, maybe I hadn't met the right people yet, or maybe it wasn't, I hadn't had the right platform to put my stuff out for me to kind of realize I was good at that sort of stuff.
I have this opinion that Twitter is almost this sort of, it has its own sort of genre of comedy and its own this sort of brand of people that is where they get their that is where they get their fix of humor from. And it's almost this, I know Twitter is probably the biggest platform in social media in the world right now, but it almost has this niche of comedy. Obviously you do things like tweets of the week, and there are a lot of people who will read them who don't really go on Twitter and they'll go, like, I don't really understand this. Why? How is this funny? And then you have other people who would be like tears laughing just at a tweet, like. And I suppose, if you found inspiration kind of in Twitter in that audience, was there any sort of larger inspiration that came from that? I know you worked with Joe.ie. I know you were with Mario Rosenstock for a bit as well. Was there, did you find inspiration from working with them, or was there any sort of previous comedians in Ireland that you found that you enjoyed and you liked their style, and or was it just so it came kind of naturally?
I think, yeah, like Twitter, like it's interesting because it's textual for loads of it, and my humor was that for years and years and years, and it was only kind of, I decided to start filming myself doing stuff, and I it's weird. I can't really remember who I was watching at the time or anything like that. I think the Rubber Bandits were kind of on my radar at that time, but there was, it was all sitcoms and sketch shows and all that kind of stuff that I really, really liked. Even kind of early on, there was like time in the 2000s where there was like, say, Little Britain, the Catherine Tate show, League of Gentlemen, like all those kind of things. I really loved them. I wanted to make that, but obviously I only had a camera and only myself, so I decided to do that kind of a thing. I think Mario Rosenstock, when I was a kid, absolutely, because he was height of his fame, the early 2000s or whatever, and we had like a CD of his, we had like Gift Grub and stuff like that, and I thought that was the cleverest thing ever. But I think it was kind of the two-pronged effect of having that kind of a background, that kind of an interest in my childhood, and then coming onto Twitter where you have really weird accounts, like Drill, or there's like a whole section of weird Twitter, like Fred Delicious and Sad Tiger, and just people who make funny tweets that are just bizarre and don't work in any other format whatsoever, but it unlocks this kind of weird bit of your brain where you're like, oh, I didn't think about it like that. I'm gonna, that kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I've been on it since I think I was 12 years old, and I'm now just hardwired to that humor. And I'll sit down and watch like a stand-up show, and I'll go, that's not funny, and I'll read some totally arbitrary tweet and go, that's funny. Like, and obviously, you've gained a fair whack of a cult following now on Twitter. A lot of it down to recreating the viral videos in a singing style. How did that come about? Like, where did that idea of seeing this, a video on Twitter or a video on the internet and going, I'm gonna sing about that? How did that kind of come about?
Yeah, because I've always played with music, and it's something I've done on the side for years. I had recording equipment for years, and I was kind of sending stuff over the back with a mate of mine, but it was never that serious. And so I decided, like, this in like January, I was like, oh, my guitar is repaired. I'm going to see if I can make some music. And, because I had an audience on Twitter, I'd be like, what if I release some music and we'll see what they feel about that, The only problem is I cannot take myself seriously one bit. And so lyrics are very, very difficult because I cannot resist the urge to take the piss.
Mm.
So it was kind of like, okay, I'm struggling with this. I just need placeholder lyrics. I need like Lorem Ipsum text, or I need like, I was getting like ingredients of things and trying to sing them out and stuff. And then I was like, what do I have on my phone? And I'd done an impression of Aidan Gillen doing Aoife McGregor, and that the transcript of the Aoife McGregor voice note was on my phone, and I had this kind of track on my computer that I was messing with, and I was like, what if I sang this over this? And that kind of, yeah, that's what opened it up. And I was like, oh, I could do this with anything. You know, there's so many different clips out there, and the Come Down With Me one, because that's 5 years old, there was the anniversary thing and stuff like that. So it was in the back of my head, and I was like, wouldn't it be funny if I did this? And yeah, just snowballed from there. That one exploded, and it was kind of
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I'll just keep doing this then, because I've endless amounts of content. You know, I'll probably run out of hooks eventually, or run out of drum beats and stuff. But like, yeah, it's so easy to do that. I can't believe I hadn't done it before. I thought about it before, like, you know. But yeah.
It is very funny, and I think people get a lot of enjoyment out of it, especially the most, because this isn't like the way you do comedy. A lot of people have found their creativity kind of locked off now because of lockdown and so on.
Mm.
But you seem to have flourished. Like, how have you sort of dealt with your craft in a time where a lot of people's more overall feeling is creativity is kind of really down low? Like, I feel like it looks like you flourished in it, really.
Yeah, I think it's always how I've created, because I started doing the sketches when I lived in Coleraine in Northern Ireland, and I was a little bit isolated. I couldn't drive, and I couldn't, there was just nobody kind of around that I could hang out with, because everyone was a student, and I was kind of over that, and it was very odd, and not like, I just spent lots of time in my room, so it was something to keep myself entertained. And then when lockdown happened, I guess it was kind of the same thing, as in like, I am bored, I've nothing to do in the evening, so I'll make my own entertainment, and that's essentially what's happened. I think it does affect your kind of your creativity a little bit locked down, because you're not around people as much,
Mm.
and you don't have kind of interactions that you could make jokes out of, and you don't see as much, you don't get, have as many conversations and all that kind of stuff, and all your news is pretty much the same thing about disease and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's you're a lot less stimulated, but I mean, I have the time now to make things, in the evenings, because I didn't have a long commute or that kind of thing.
Yeah, and you're not alone in the kind of sort of genre of comedy. I mean, like, you have the likes of Sean Burke, Ryan Carrick, Tony
Mm.
Cantwell, all these kind of guys that just sort of it's sketch based now. I know Tony Cantwell, he's in his bizarre own little bubble. Yeah, where do you kind of feel like Irish comedy is going, I suppose, at the moment? Do you think it's stepping away from the more so traditional stage shows and so on, and going more towards viral content, internet content, or is that just kind of they're rolling with the times and that's just it?
I think like stage and gigs and stuff, that'll always be there, and we're very good at that, and there's loads of brilliant live comedians. I think what lockdown's kind of given myself and those lads you mentioned there is a bit of legitimacy in it, and that we can entertain people, and we're not just kind of throwaway Facebook kind of stuff, if you know what I mean. I know a lot of what we do is very throwaway and very silly, but it's kind of I think it's kind of given us a platform where those other comedians who did live stuff didn't have that. It's a completely different skill in terms of your beats and stuff like that. And not like, I wouldn't be able to do a live show because I've never dealt with a live audience, and I would kind of want them to be quiet when I'm telling jokes and stuff like that. So I don't know how to deal with that. Whereas if you're coming from the other end, it works with people, but you're not sure, you don't get the instant validation of a laugh. So it's kind of hard to then construct sketches and things like that if your humor is observational. So it's kind of it's two kind of different things. I think lockdown though has given us more exposure, and kind of people are looking at us as in like, oh, that's where I get my comedy now from, because those other guys aren't really around at the moment.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to change particularly. I just think I think online's kind of going to be given a little bit more weight than it has been before.
Yeah. And in terms of going forward this year, and obviously next year, when we're coming out of this stage of our lives, and you know, hopefully getting back to some semblance of interaction with people. Do you ever foresee, is there any sort of the big thing in the pipeline, or do you ever foresee yourself, you know, doing live shows, or are you happy with kind of how it's going now and just seeing where you end up?
Yeah, I think I'll have to wait and see until things open up again and see what opportunities are out there. But I mean, I am happy to try absolutely anything. I would love to do live shows. And I think with music, it's made it very easy for me to do a live show. Whereas before, I didn't know, oh, if I'm doing something, am I characters or am I myself or whatever. Whereas I think with music, you can build a show around the songs.
Yeah,
So I'd love to explore that once this comes out. But I think because everything has just been so unpredictable, even last year, but even throughout my comedy-ness over the last kind of 3 years, if you know what I mean, I never actually know where things are going to go. And I've gotten to the following that I have a lot quicker than I thought I did. So, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to say anything for definite or say, oh, I really want to do this or whatever. But I mean, anything's possible as far as I'm concerned, you know?
of course, absolutely. And the last question for you, has there been ever any sort of, since you've undertaken comedy and sort of getting yourself out there and gaining a following and so on, has there been any sort of, you know, surreal sort of meeting with someone or someone reaching out to you, that you were kind of taken aback by a bit?
Yeah, I mean it happened a lot when I was at Joe, and we used to have kind of interview guests and stuff like that, and they knew who you were. You know, so like I met Mario Rosenstock because the producer did the same podcast on Joe or whatever, and he goes to me, "Oh, I really like your stuff," and I thought he was just being nice, and he kind of was like, I really like your stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, it's that kind of taken abackness. And then we had another lady who was talking about the rights of kind of sex workers in Ireland. And before we started the interview, she goes, oh, I really like your stuff as well. And I was like, okay. I just didn't expect, you know, because she was talking about quite a serious topic, you know?
Yeah,
So yeah, just like lots of different people like started following me then. You know, I have a professor of physiology at the University of California follows me, and then, you know, Dawn French said she really liked my stuff before, and do you know what I mean? It's reached places that I never thought it would, in terms of not just comedians but like other people who are just very good at what they do, you know.
yeah, that's fantastic. Listen, we can wrap it up there now. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time out